Hey everybody, Ryan with FFP Customs, and today I want to talk about a topic that I've been wanting to educate myself on and thought why not make a little video and share it with everyone in hopes that it might help you with your braking system. And that topic is force applied by the driver. So your driving style, how you drive. Are you aggressive? Are you not so aggressive? Are you extremely strong? Are you not so strong? All these things are really actually very important things to consider when you're building your braking system to make sure that system is set up properly for you and what your brake manufacturer wants as a pressure output in an emergency stop situation. So not only do you want to make sure that you're within their threshold, for instance, we're going to use 12 to 1500 PSI. So not only do we want to make sure we're within that range, but we also want to make sure we're not exceeding it. You might find that your brake manufacturer has found that they're keeping you within this window because that's where their brakes work best, and their components don't want to go to 2000 PSI maybe. Maybe there's problems there. Maybe they don't work as well. Maybe there's flex. Whatever the case may be, this is just an example of things to consider. So what I have found to be the best way to go about this is there are math equations that you can use, formulas that you can use to help you get these answers, I think, close before making a purchase, so you don't purchase things twice. We will apply those formulas at the end of this video, but one of them, you need force, a force value. How much force? So now it's really a guess or an estimate of how much force you can apply. So we're going to use this video to try to touch on that, to get you thinking about it, and at least maybe give you an educated guess for yourself to make when purchasing everything, to try to get you as close to your end result as possible. There are a few ways to manipulate force, and that is pedal ratio and master cylinder size. Our standard FFP Customs kits come with a 15/16 master cylinder, but we can also offer 7/8, 1 inch, an inch and an eighth to make sure that we can achieve the end value we need as far as the pressure outputs. And another way is pedal ratio. So here you have one of our pedals, and it's on the middle setting, so that'd be a 5.5 to 1 pedal ratio. And if you moved it up one hole, it'd be 5 to 1. If you moved it down one hole, it'd be 6 to 1. These are all ways to change the leverage to where you can apply more braking, more force to the master cylinder or less. So if we moved it down one, let's say we're on the 6 to 1 pedal ratio. Pedal ratios are measured from the center of the pad to the center of the pivot to the push rod hole. And let's just say your foot's always in this range. Well, as you are in an emergency stop situation and you have to really apply the brakes, you're going to apply more force, going to push the pedal probably further than you used to. Your foot is going to pivot differently, and your foot might end up down here. Well, if it does, you just increase the pedal ratio quite a bit. So you can go from, let's say, just an example, 6 to 1 to 7 to 1 just by where your foot was placed on the pad, which is going to give you more leverage, which is going to create more pressure output from the master to the caliper. And it's all things to consider when you're building a braking system. So the math can get you close. Unless you know what your force is, then it can get you right on the money. But the math can get you in a range and can get you to make an educated guess on making the right purchase for your parts. And then you have some changes here that you can make, that you don't have to go out and spend more money or take your system apart. You can just simply move the pedal pad. But the ultimate, you need to be in the car and you need to bleed the brakes. So I think when you're at this point, I think every race car should have brake sensors in the car. I think they should have one in the rear and one in the front. Not only for this, but for troubleshooting. If you ever have a problem on the track and you find out, maybe your brakes were the cause of it, or maybe your brakes got messed up from it, and you could see that, there's a million and one cases that could happen. But the bottom line is, I don't think you can ever have too much data, and hopefully that particular data is something you never have to use, but if you need it, it's there. Let's just say you're not in a situation or you don't want to put sensors in the car and log that data. Fine, fair enough. Any performance car that's putting brakes on there and you're trying to go out and accelerate fast and you need to stop fast, I think should at least screw in a manual gauge during the bleeding process. So when you're bleeding the brakes, you can simply screw that. Most brakes have a secondary bleed screw. You can screw this gauge in. You can see what your pressures are at the front, then you can screw it in the rear, and you can see what your pressures are in the rear. And in this moment, you can also put yourself to the best of your ability in an emergency stop situation and see how you apply the brakes. You know, strap yourself in, treat it just like a real scenario. You know, split second decision. You got to get into the brakes. How do you do that? How do you apply it is going to dictate ultimately what comes to the caliper, the pressure. And that's a good opportunity to make sure not only you're within that threshold that your brake manufacturer wants you to be in, but you're not exceeding it. And it's just an added piece of information that for me would build confidence to know that I have a braking system in my car that when I need it, it's there for me, and I've done the best of my ability to make it that way, and it's suited to me. We have taken an old valve spring tester that we've mounted on the pedal pad, and in my personal car, I have two sensors in the car, one in the passenger rear caliper and one in the front passenger caliper. And I'm going to go in there and strap in, and I am going to apply what I think I would do in an emergency stop and see what kind of force I apply to the pedal. And really that is just to show you how this stuff works and to get your mind thinking about your system and how you apply the brakes to make sure you know your system is as safe as possible. Because at the end of the day, we all love going fast, but safety, you can't ever have too much safety. So once you make sure that this system is set up properly for you, you don't have to think about it anymore. It's done. So add that peace of mind to your program and check the brakes, the pressures. So hang tight. I appreciate you watching. We're going to get in the car and we'll get some more information. Thank you. Okay, so now we are at the math portion of our video. And anyone out there that's wanting to get straight to the point and just know their numbers, we are going to recommend going to TBM Brakes website. So that's tbmbrakes.com. And at the top left, they have a button there that says resources. If you click on that, you're going to get a drop-down menu. And if you go to brake system setup and calculations, they've got straight to the point math. It's very helpful. They've got multiple formulas on there to kind of get you to the end result. If you're wanting to know the back end of all that and you're wanting to see it deeper, I'm going to go over that right now with our tables and read off some stuff to you so you can kind of, better understand it. And here we go. So here are the equations we use to find how brake pressure seen at the calipers relates to the force applied by the driver. The overall equation for brake pressure, or any pressure in general for that matter, is equal to a force divided by the area. In this case, the force that applies the pressure to the brakes is the force seen by the master cylinder push rod. We can calculate this force based off the force applied by the driver and the pedal ratio of your brake pedal, which enhances the force input of the driver. The second equation shows the relationship. Now that we have a way to calculate the force part of our pressure equation, we need the area of the master cylinder, which can be calculated using the third equation and the diameter of our master cylinder. Applying the equations on the previous slide and the known specifications of our brake system, we can calculate the expected PSI for our setup. We first calculate the force seen by the master cylinder push rod, which is applied by the driver through the pedal. This takes into account our pedal ratio, and we find that with 165 pounds of force applied by the driver, the master cylinder sees 907.5 pounds of force due to the 5.5 to 1 pedal ratio. With that, all we need now is the area for which that force is applied to, which in this case is the master cylinder bore area. We simply plug in our master cylinder bore diameter to the area equation and find that the area of our 1-inch bore master cylinder is 0.785 inches squared. Lastly, we divide our force, 907.5 pounds, by our area, 0.785 inches squared. And that leaves us with an expected brake pressure of 1156.05 psi. A good double check to see if your equations make sense is to keep units to the very end and see that the units make sense. In this case, we see that it does, since pressure is measured in pounds per square inch. Now let's compare our calculations to what we saw in the real life race car. We see that our peak pressure was 1170. This difference in pressure from our expected value is likely because our pedal ratio is calculated off the center of the pedal pad, and the force I applied may have been slightly lower than center, therefore increasing pedal ratio and brake pressure. You may have noticed in the video that the pressure reading for front and rear were different. This is done purposely using a proportioning valve on the front brake circuit to help reduce pressure, since we are using a smaller caliper and a skinny tire up front. We are trying to even things out more to allow the rear brakes to get involved more so we can utilize the larger caliper in the rear and the larger tire, which has more surface area to be applied to the ground. We do not have the exact recipe for this, as there are so many variables involved, so we picked this split to start from. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us via email, sales@ffpcustoms.com, or by phone, area code 813-928-1449. Thanks.